Have you ever observed how kids make decisions? Oh my God, it's effortless. It's actually pretty remarkable to watch just how confident they are about everything. It's estimated we make over 35,000 decisions every single day, most totally unconscious. Not for kids, no. They'll happily decide on every single one of those. Doesn't matter how big of a rush you're in to get them out of the house. They'll take ice cream for breakfast, followed by wearing their raincoat to the beach, and round out the day by setting up a slip and slide in the living room. But then at some point, we get introduced to the concept of trade-offs. And this certainty and the vastness of choice, well, it goes out the window. And as we get older, we start to see that decisions have consequences. And these consequences manifest in different ways depending on who we are and what situations we're in. So even with all of this practice, decision-making is still something most of us struggle with. I mean, it's no wonder there's countless books and trainings, even entire teams and companies dedicated to helping people get better at it. Meanwhile, we're still sweating right through our business casual anytime we have to make a hard call. But in my experience across Microsoft, Apple, and Google, building processes and tools to foster inclusive and effective teams, I found the factors holding us back, it was never things like creativity or intelligence, even finding the perfect decision-making framework. No. It was the inner struggles, the feeling of not being good enough or not wanting to let people down. That's what got in the way of making decisions we were confident in. The feeling of being an imposter, it's rampant in the workplace. For everybody, but more so in situations where we're underrepresented. And as a woman in tech, often being one of the only women in the teams and meetings I was in, a fear that everybody was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake, it made me dread making decisions. If I made the wrong call, would people think, yep, she's not technical enough? If people didn't agree with me, would that put me out of the running to make key decisions in the future? If I went with the tuna sandwich instead of the Caesar salad I got every day, would I hate it and be starving the rest of the afternoon, so hangry and distracted when I had to present in the strategy meeting that I accidentally show my Zillow tab instead of the quarterly forecast? But the moment this all changed for me was when I realized I wasn't alone in this. And as I talked to more women, I found that on the backdrop of the biases and double standards we had to contend with in the workplace, our inner critic was taking the bait, often adopting a perspective that we're not good decision makers. And I don't know about yours, but my inner critic, ooh, it's real convincing. Well, the irony, of course, is that women tend to be excellent decision makers. Along with McKinsey and Company's findings year after year that companies with more women on their executive teams tend to outperform those with fewer. Yeah. A study published by McMaster University found that women's cooperative approach to decision-making that factors in the concerns of others leads to fairer and stickier decisions. Now, this is especially in those high-stakes, high-pressure situations, from board meetings to negotiations to, finally deciding what to watch on Netflix after staring at your queue for an hour. But just knowing this, it's not enough to send the inner critic packing. And in a minute, I'll share a few solutions anybody can try to feel more empowered, to combat this inner doubt, next time you have to make a decision, big or small. But before I dive into solutions, let's look at some examples of when the inner critic's at the wheel. So I talked about how easy it was for kids to make decisions. Well, for parents, it's the opposite. When my husband and I were researching preschools for our toddler, everything was on the table to overthink. The hours, the summer schedules, the teaching methods, the activities. I swear, I have built spreadsheets to track products launching to millions of people that were way less elaborate than was needed to figure out that preschool situation. I mean, what if we got it wrong? What if she didn't get into college? and every parent's dream, what if she hates it and spends years in therapy talking about how her parents make such bad decisions? You know what sealed the deal? Finding a school that provided snacks. There was a decision I just wasn't ready to have to make every single day. And wind up with a kid starting a side hustle, trading her stale quinoa chips for fruit roll-ups. As if that wasn't hard enough, how about the pressure we put on ourselves around the expectations of others? As a woman in the corporate world, we're always in this tug of war. Be warm, strong, empathetic, firm, compassionate, direct, all at the same time, while not being considered weak, intimidating, or bossy. It can feel like no matter how I approach a situation, I'll never get it right. This is especially true when it comes to giving feedback. Oh, the first time I had to give hard feedback as a manager, I got completely stuck. One example sounded too nitpicky, the other one too vague. How do you open a hard conversation like that? With a question? A joke? I put so much pressure on not wanting to let this person down, and on feeling like this one conversation would define my future as a manager, that I went rogue. I think I opened the conversation with, "We are gathered here today," as if I was officiating a wedding, and somewhere in there we took a right turn and ended up debating the future of cryptocurrency. And no, at no point did we get to the heart of the feedback. So these problems, decisions feeling too high stakes and getting lost in the expectations of others, fuel the inner critic, feeding into a hyper-scrutiny that women already face in the workplace, reminding us if we get it wrong, that might be the only shot we get. But I'd argue these problems stem from the same origin. Everyday decisions feeling too permanent and final. And when we reframe our relationship to the finality of decisions and return to that childlike sense of exploration and possibility, and maybe even ice cream for breakfast, we can reframe our relationship with decision-making as a whole and continue to own our power as the decision-making badasses we are. Why? Because decisions aren't the end. They're only the beginning. And here are 3 ways we get there. So our first solution to reframing the finality of decisions is to remember, whenever making a decision, we're looking for the right decision for right now, not forever. We can't predict the future. Doesn't matter how much a BuzzFeed astrology quiz tries to convince us otherwise. So the more we attach to what might happen, the more we open the door to the inner critic telling us all the things that might go wrong. Instead, remembering whenever making a decision, we're basing it on what we know at that particular moment, we can let go of the concept of perfect. About a year after I got married, I got recruited for a job in Seattle that was too good to pass up. The catch was my husband was in school in San Francisco, and this meant we'd have to live 800 miles apart for the foreseeable future. But the job, it was so in line with where I wanted to go in my career that we decided I should take it. I moved alone to a new city, into a microscopic studio apartment. I even sprung for a Columbia jacket just to fully embrace that Pacific Northwest lifestyle. It was scary. We were early in our relationship and knew this would put it to the test. But we also realized this didn't have to be our situation forever. And going for it opened the door to my entire career in tech I've had since. Building on finding the right decision for right now, since a decision is only a hypothesis, our second solution is to get creative by embracing an experimentation mindset. At the start of the pandemic, a friend came to me feeling frustrated for not following through with some of the new hobbies she was taking on in the spirit of having a little extra time on her hands. But she was judging herself for not following through with something that she didn't even know she cared about yet. So I encouraged her to run a little experiment. What if instead she approached the new things she was exploring as free trials, testing them out before committing? Something like spending 15 minutes a day in a language learning app, or trying a few fun recipes she found online. This way she could see if she was even interested in something like learning 5 new languages, or culinary school in Paris, before deciding to commit in a more serious way. The free trial allows us to wait to make a decision till we've collected more evidence. I mean, don't you kind of wish you could have given someone you just started dating a free trial? Cutting your losses 30 days in if you just weren't that into it? With our experimentation mindset in our corner, our third solution is to focus on motivators over outcomes. When we look at every decision as the end-all, be-all, of course our inner critic will have a party when something goes wrong. But when we anchor to what motivated us to make a decision in the first place and the values and drivers we were tapping into, individual outcomes, they become secondary. I changed jobs a few years ago and immediately got that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that I made the wrong call. The work was really different than I was expecting, and I missed the camaraderie of my old team. It got so bad, I was considering going back to my previous manager and asking for an undo. But when I was moments away from having that conversation, something didn't feel right, including not being sure undo was like something you could ask for. See, the reasons that compelled me to make the decision in the first place, like wanting to be in more of a leadership position, amongst other things, were all still completely valid. And just because I wasn't happy with this particular outcome right out of the gate, it didn't mean those reasons would be gone if I went back. So I stayed, and as opportunities came up, like raising my hand to lead a project, I jumped for them. And soon, this decision I had so quickly labeled as bad started to look a lot closer to what I was looking for in the first place. When we run into an outcome we don't like, our first instinct can be to want to erase it and start over. But instead of an undo, let's go for a redo, making a new decision that factors in both the learning from the outcome we weren't happy with, plus a deeper understanding of our inner drivers. So making decisions is the bane of most people's existence. But by reframing, we can take some of the pressure off ourselves and off of others. And we do this by remembering decisions aren't the end. They're only the beginning. We're in the midst of the Great Resignation, where millions of people have left the workforce, many by force, but many by choice. We have the opportunity to offer more support and make it safer to take risks when it comes to making decisions. We can rebuild our working norms around the biases and double standards we came in with, or we can choose another path. Make space for everyone in your teams, families, friends, relationships to build confidence making decisions by remembering most day-to-day decisions, they're not permanent or final. Using the tools of finding the right decision for right now, embracing an experimentation mindset, and focusing on motivators over outcomes. Our teams will become not only destinations people want to join and be a part of, but they'll be full of confident decision makers as well. So the next time you're out there, faced with a decision, big or small, and feel that inner critic starting to take hold, reframe the narrative. Remember, decisions aren't the end. They're only the beginning. And when they're flexible, fluid, and anchored to what matters most to you, you can never get them wrong. Thank you.